Welcome back for another deep dive. And this time, we're going to tackle adulthood. And I bet you're thinking, okay, I'm living it, I get it. But guess what? We're going deep into chapter 20 of a human development textbook. And let me tell you, there's some surprising stuff in here.
I know it's funny because we think about adulthood as this like destination when it's really a process. It's so dynamic and it's influenced by biology, our choices, and even societal factors.
It's a lot more than we give it credit for. And the chapter kicks off with this really interesting story about Jenny. She's a student
Oh, yeah.
and basically carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, raising her kids, helping her nephews, complicated relationship, all while trying to better her life.
Yeah, her story is a powerful example of how the choices that we make as adults are really intertwined with our social context, and those choices, they shape not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us.
Okay, so let's unpack some of the science behind this whole adulthood thing. The chapter dives into senescence, which basically means the biological aging process. So is it all downhill from here?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
While our genes do play a role in how we age, our lifestyle choices and our social environment have a much bigger impact than we might think.
That's a relief. So even though the chapter says that lung capacity decreases by about 4% per decade after age 20, there are things we can do to counteract that.
Exactly. Think of it like an organ reserve.
Yeah.
Regular exercise and avoiding pollutants can make a huge difference in maintaining healthy lung function as we age. It's like building up a savings account for your body.
So our actions really do matter. What about our brains? I feel like we always hear about brain cells dying off, but the chapter talks about new brain cells actually forming in adulthood. Is that even possible?
It is. It's called neurogenesis. And while it's still being debated among scientists, research does suggest that new neurons can actually form. And our brains, they're constantly rewiring and adapting throughout life.
So our brains aren't just static lumps in our skull. They're actually changing and evolving along with us.
Precisely. And this plasticity is really quite remarkable. Studies on stroke victims have shown how the brain can actually rewire itself and regain lost functions. It demonstrates the brain's incredible capacity for change.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. But let's be honest, we all notice those outward signs of aging, the wrinkles, the gray hairs. Is there anything we can do about those?
Well, the chapter explains how skin loses collagen over time, which leads to wrinkles, and hair follicles produce less pigment, resulting in gray hair.
Yeah, I can see those changes happening already.
But these are natural processes, and there's a wide range of variation in how people experience them. Genetics, lifestyle, and even cultural attitudes towards aging play a role.
Okay. What about that dreaded middle age spread? Is that just inevitable too?
The chapter does talk about how body shape tends to change as we age, with increased waist circumference and sometimes even a slight decrease in height.
Oh, so not just a myth.
Right. But again, exercise and maintaining muscle mass can make a big difference. It's not all about resigning ourselves to a certain body shape. We have more agency than we think.
It sounds like staying active is key to aging gracefully. Now let's dive into a topic I think a lot of people are curious about and maybe even a little anxious about. How aging affects our sexual and reproductive systems.
It's a valid concern, and the chapter acknowledges that while physical changes can occur, satisfaction doesn't have to decline.
Wait, really?
One study actually found that sexual satisfaction didn't decrease for women over 40.
Wow.
Arousal and orgasm might take a little bit longer, but connection and intimacy often become even more important.
That's reassuring to hear. It's not all about those Hollywood portrayals of youth and vitality.
Not at all. It's about a shift in focus, a deeper understanding of our bodies and those of our partners. And the chapter highlights how cultural and personal factors can impact satisfaction as much as, if not more than, physical changes.
Now let's address a topic that can be tough to talk about: infertility. The chapter mentions both primary and secondary infertility. What's the difference?
Primary infertility means never being able to conceive naturally, while secondary infertility refers to difficulty conceiving after already having a child.
And thankfully, there's assisted reproductive technology, or RT, to help couples who are struggling to conceive.
Absolutely. The chapter specifically discusses in vitro fertilization, or IVF, and how technologies like freezing ova have opened up more possibilities for family planning, especially for women who are delaying childbirth or undergoing medical treatments that could impact their fertility.
I remember reading this story about a woman who used her deceased husband's frozen sperm to have twins. It's amazing how technology is changing the landscape of family building.
It is. And speaking of changes, let's shift our focus to some significant hormonal shifts that occur during middle age: menopause and andropause.
Okay, so menopause is about period stopping. But what's actually going on in the body?
It's triggered by a decline in hormone production, specifically estrogen, progesterone, and even testosterone. The average age is 51, but it can occur anywhere between 42 and 58.
And it's not just about periods, right? There are other physical and emotional changes that can happen too.
Definitely. The chapter describes a range of possible effects. Hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, difficulty sleeping.
But not every woman experiences all of those symptoms, right?
Right. The intensity of symptoms can vary drastically. Some women barely notice any changes, while others experience intense discomfort.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all experience.
Yeah.
Now, do men go through anything similar to menopause? I've heard the term andropause thrown around.
The chapter addresses this directly, and it turns out andropause isn't a sudden event like menopause. It's a gradual decline in testosterone levels, which can affect sexual desire and function. But men continue producing viable sperm throughout life.
So no biological deadline for men like there is for women.
Right. However, some men do experience symptoms related to declining testosterone, and they might choose to explore testosterone replacement therapy, or HRT. But just like with HRT for women, there are potential benefits and risks to consider.
It seems like hormones are a complex piece of the aging puzzle for both men and women, and it's important to approach them with a personalized lens rather than looking for a one-size-fits-all solution.
I couldn't agree more. And this brings us to a theme that weaves throughout the entire chapter: the power of our habits, both good and bad. The choices we make on a daily basis have a significant impact on how we age.
So let's start with the good stuff: exercise, the fountain of youth.
It really does seem that way. The chapter emphasizes how regular physical activity provides incredible benefits for both our physical and mental health.
Okay, but be honest, how much exercise are we talking about here?
The general guideline is at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity per week.
Okay.
But honestly, even incorporating small amounts of movement into your day can make a difference.
Every little bit counts.
Absolutely. It's not just about hitting the gym. It's about finding ways to move your body that you enjoy and can sustain over time. Walking, gardening, dancing, even playing with your kids, it all adds up.
Now let's flip the coin and talk about some habits that aren't so healthy. The chapter covers drug use, starting with medication use in adulthood.
It highlights the fact that medication use, both prescription and over-the-counter, has increased significantly among adults in recent years. While medications have undoubtedly improved many people's lives, the chapter encourages us to be mindful of potential downsides, like over-reliance and possible side effects.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of drugs, the chapter also touches on illegal drug use.
It notes that illegal drug use generally declines after age 25, but acknowledges the changing landscape of marijuana use with recent legalization trends.
Yeah.
The key takeaway is that we need more long-term data to understand the full impact of these shifts.
Okay, so let's move on to everyone's favorite morning pick-me-up, coffee. Good news or bad news?
The good news is that the effects of coffee can vary genetically, and many adults find it beneficial. However, it's crucial to pay attention to how your own body reacts.
So it's about moderation and self-awareness.
Exactly. Now, on a more serious note, let's talk about tobacco use.
I'm guessing this one isn't going to be as positive.
Unfortunately, you're right. While smoking rates have declined dramatically, especially in the U.S., tobacco use remains a major health risk globally. It's linked to numerous diseases, particularly lung cancer.
And it's not just about individual health, right? Secondhand smoke can also have serious consequences for those around us.
Exactly. And it's interesting to note that the chapter delves into the historical gender differences in smoking rates.
Oh.
It turns out that social factors like when men and women started smoking played a role in the differences we see in lung cancer deaths over time.
It's a reminder that our health choices aren't just personal, they're influenced by cultural norms and societal trends as well.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears to another common habit: alcohol use. Is it good or bad?
I have a feeling this one's a bit of a gray area, like coffee.
You could say that.
Yeah.
The chapter mentions the ongoing debate about moderate drinking, acknowledging that some studies suggest potential health benefits. However, it emphasizes the consensus that excessive drinking is harmful, leading to a range of health problems.
So moderation is key, and it's about recognizing when a habit crosses the line from enjoyable to harmful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of harmful habits, we can't ignore the devastating opioid epidemic that's gripping many communities.
This one hits close to home for a lot of people. What does the chapter have to say about it?
It highlights the alarming rise in opioid deaths, particularly among adults aged 26 to 44.
That's heartbreaking.
It often starts with prescribed pain medication and then escalates to stronger opioids like heroin or fentanyl.
Wow.
The chapter really emphasizes the urgent need for comprehensive prevention and treatment strategies to address this complex issue.
It sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach that tackles the root causes of addiction and provides support for those who are struggling.
Absolutely. And the chapter also points to the importance of naloxone, a medication that can reverse opioid overdoses in saving lives.
So increasing awareness and access to naloxone could make a real difference. Now, let's shift our focus to a topic that becomes increasingly important as we age: nutrition.
As we get older, our metabolism naturally slows down, making nutrition even more crucial for maintaining a healthy weight and preventing chronic diseases.
I've definitely noticed my metabolism isn't what it used to be. So even if I eat the same amount as I did in my 20s, it's more likely to lead to weight gain now.
That's right. The chapter explains that metabolism decreases by about 1/3 between ages 20 and 60, and digestion also becomes less efficient.
So we need to be more mindful of what and how much we eat as we age. What about the global rise in obesity? Is that just a matter of people making poor food choices?
It's more complex than that. While individual choices certainly play a role, the chapter points to larger societal shifts that have contributed to this trend.
Like what?
Things like increased access to calorie-rich, processed foods, larger portion sizes, and more sedentary lifestyles.
Right.
All of these factors contribute to the problem.
So it's not just about willpower, it's about the environment we live in.
Exactly. And the chapter doesn't shy away from the psychological consequences of obesity, discussing the stigma and prejudice that individuals often face.
I imagine that can create a vicious cycle, leading to further isolation and unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Unfortunately, that's often the case. The chapter does mention bariatric surgery as a possible option for individuals struggling with morbid obesity, particularly those with type 2 diabetes.
So there are medical interventions that can help in certain cases, but it seems like prevention through healthy eating habits and lifestyle changes is key.
Absolutely. And finally, let's explore a fascinating connection that the chapter highlights: the correlation between income and health.
This is an important topic because it shows how social factors can impact our health. What does the chapter say about this link?
It points out a strong correlation between socioeconomic status, or SES, and health outcomes. This means that people with higher education and income tend to live longer and healthier lives.
I imagine that's due to a combination of factors like access to healthcare, healthier food choices, and even reduced stress levels.
Right. And the chapter provides some striking examples of health disparities between different SES groups, both within the U.S. and globally.
So even in countries with universal healthcare, social factors can still play a significant role in shaping health outcomes.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with multiple layers.
And this brings us back to Jenny from the beginning of the chapter. Her story really highlights this interplay between individual resilience and the challenges of navigating a system that's often stacked against those with lower socioeconomic status.
Right. Despite facing significant challenges, Jenny made conscious choices to pursue education, advocate for her children, and build a strong support network.
And it sounds like those choices made a real difference in her life and the lives of her children.
Her story isn't meant to downplay the real struggles associated with low SES, but rather to illustrate the power of human agency and the importance of social support in navigating life's complexities. It's about recognizing that while we can't control everything, we still have the power to make choices that shape our trajectories.
Her story is incredibly inspiring. And speaking of navigating complexities, I feel like this deep dive has been a journey of discovery, challenging our assumptions about adulthood and prompting us to think more deeply about the choices we make and the factors that shape our lives.
It's been a fascinating exploration of the complexities of this stage of life, revealing the intricate interplay of biology, choice, and social context. And ultimately, I think it empowers us to approach adulthood with a greater sense of agency and awareness.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What do we want them to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's crucial to remember that adulthood isn't a static destination, but a dynamic process of growth, adaptation, and change. It's a journey, not a fixed point.
And while our bodies naturally undergo changes as we age, we have more influence over how we age than we might realize. Our choices, our habits, the connections we cultivate, these all play a role in shaping our experience of adulthood.
Absolutely. And that leads to the second key takeaway: the importance of social connection and support. Building strong relationships, both personal and communal, can be incredibly protective, helping us navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life.
It's about recognizing that we're not meant to go it alone. And I would add a third takeaway, the power of knowledge and self-awareness. The more we understand about the science of aging, the factors that influence our health, and the ways our choices impact our well-being, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions that support our long-term thriving.
Couldn't agree more. This deep dive has given us a lot to ponder, and we hope it sparked a sense of curiosity in our listeners to continue exploring these topics and discover what resonates most with them.
It's all about empowering ourselves to make conscious choices that align with our values and aspirations, and to create an experience of adulthood that's both fulfilling and meaningful.
And as we move through this journey, it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
Right.
It's about finding what resonates with us individually and honoring our unique paths.
So instead of striving for some idealized version of adulthood, it's about embracing the messy, complex, and ultimately beautiful journey that it is, with all its twists and turns.
And that brings me to a final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Okay.
Knowing that we have more agency than we often realize, what small changes can you make today to invest in your future well-being and create a more fulfilling experience of adulthood?
It's a powerful question that invites us to take ownership of our choices and to approach this stage of life with intention and purpose. And I would add, don't be afraid to seek support, to connect with others who are on a similar journey, and to celebrate the wisdom and resilience that comes with aging.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, and by sharing our experiences, knowledge, and support, we can create a more vibrant and enriching experience of adulthood for ourselves and for future generations.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the multifaceted world of adulthood with us.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive, so stay tuned for more insights and discussions.
Until then, take care and be well.
See you next time. And as we kind of dig deeper into this chapter, it becomes more clear that adulthood is this tapestry woven from threads of biology, choice, and circumstance.
And one thread I really wanted to pull on was the discussion on obesity. The chapter doesn't just mention it in passing. It actually dedicates a good amount of time to exploring this complex global health challenge.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's because it's a powerful example of how individual choices really intersect with those larger societal forces.
Yeah, the chapter includes this fascinating visual
Yeah.
representation of obesity rates all over the world, using these different sized circles to show the prevalence in various countries.
Yeah, and it's striking to see how obesity rates have risen dramatically in, well, both richer and poorer nations.
Right.
It challenges that notion that being overweight is just a marker of affluence.
It really highlights the global nature of this issue, and the chapter connects this trend to those larger shifts in our environment and lifestyles.
Exactly. Increased access to calorie-dense processed foods, larger portions, and the decline in physically demanding jobs, activities, all these things contribute to creating an environment where weight gain becomes more likely.
It makes you realize it's not just about willpower. There are powerful forces at play shaping our choices.
Absolutely. And the chapter doesn't shy away from the psychological consequences of obesity either.
Yeah.
It discusses the stigma and prejudice that individuals often face, which can lead to further isolation and unhealthy coping mechanisms.
It's a reminder that health isn't just about physical well-being. It's also about mental, emotional well-being and how all those aspects are interconnected.
And that brings us back to the importance of those daily habits and choices. Even small changes can have a ripple effect on our overall health and well-being.
So it's not about making drastic changes overnight, but making those sustainable choices that we can stick with.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that we're not alone on this journey. The chapter highlights the value of social support and connection when navigating the challenges of adulthood.
And that's something we often overlook, I think. We tend to focus on individual responsibility, but having that strong support system can make a world of difference.
True. Whether it's family, friends, community groups, having people we can rely on, confide in, celebrate with, can have a profound impact on our resilience and our well-being.
It's about fostering those connections, both for ourselves and for those around us. This ties back to Jenny's story. Despite all those obstacles, she actively sought out support and created a network that helped her thrive.
It's a testament to the power of human connection and how it can help us overcome adversity and create a more fulfilling life.
It's a reminder that we don't have to go it alone.
We don't.
And speaking of journeys, this deep dive has been a journey of discovery. challenging our assumptions about adulthood and prompting us to think more deeply about the choices that we make and the factors that shape our lives.
It has been a fascinating exploration of the complexities of this stage of life, revealing that interplay of biology, choice, and social context. And ultimately, I think it empowers us to approach adulthood with a greater sense of agency and awareness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What do we want them to walk away with?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember that adulthood isn't this static destination, but a dynamic process of growth and adaptation change.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a fixed point.
And while our bodies naturally undergo changes as we age, we have way more influence over how we age than we might realize. Our choices, habits, connections all play a role.
And that leads to the second takeaway. The importance of social connection and support. You know, building strong relationships, both personal and communal, can be incredibly protective, helping us navigate those inevitable ups and downs of life.
It's about recognizing that we're not meant to go it alone. And I would add a third takeaway. The power of knowledge and self-awareness. The more we understand about the science of aging, the factors that influence our health, and the ways our choices impact our well-being, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions that support our long-term thriving.
Couldn't agree more. This deep dive has given us a lot to ponder, and I hope it sparked a sense of curiosity for our listeners to continue exploring these topics and discover what resonates most with them.
It's all about empowering ourselves to make conscious choices that align with our values and aspirations, and to create an experience of adulthood that is both fulfilling and meaningful.
And as we move through this journey, it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. It's about finding what resonates with us individually and honoring our unique paths.
So instead of striving for some idealized version of adulthood, it's about embracing the messy, complex, and ultimately beautiful journey that it is,
Yeah.
with all its twists and turns.
And that brings me to a final thought-provoking question for our listeners. Knowing that we have more agency than we often realize, what small changes can you make today to invest in your future well-being and create a more fulfilling experience of adulthood?
It's a powerful question that invites us to take ownership of our choices and to approach this stage of life with intention and purpose. And I would add, don't be afraid to seek support, to connect with others who are on a similar journey, and to celebrate the wisdom and resilience that comes with aging.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, and by sharing our experiences, knowledge, and support, we can create a more vibrant and enriching experience of adulthood for ourselves and for future generations.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the multifaceted world of adulthood with us. It's interesting to think about how our perception of adulthood has evolved over time. The chapter touches on how societal expectations and cultural norms have shifted, influencing how we view this stage of life.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in the past, adulthood was often seen as this time of settling down and conforming to certain roles,
Right.
prioritizing stability over, personal growth and all that.
Yeah.
But today there's much more emphasis on individuality and self-discovery and pursuing passions, even later in life.
It's like the chapter is giving us permission to redefine what adulthood means for us, rather than feeling bound by those outdated expectations.
Exactly. And this shift in perspective is reflected in how we approach things like, career paths or relationships or even personal growth.
Yeah, it's no longer about following a predetermined script. It's about creating our own unique narratives.
And that can be both liberating and challenging,
Yeah.
It requires us to be more proactive in shaping our lives, embrace uncertainty, and be open to those new possibilities.
Speaking of possibilities, I think one of the most empowering takeaways from this deep dive is the realization that we have more agency than we often give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely. While there are certainly factors beyond our control, our choices, our habits, the connections we forge, they all have a profound impact on how we experience adulthood.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive passengers on this journey. We have the power to steer the ship, adjust the sails, and navigate towards a destination that aligns with our values and aspirations.
That brings us back to that thought-provoking question we posed earlier. What small changes can you make today to invest in your future well-being and create a more fulfilling experience of adulthood?
It's a question that invites us all to reflect on our priorities,
Yeah.
to identify areas where we might want to make adjustments, and to
Mhm.
take those first steps toward positive change.
And it's important to remember that change doesn't have to be drastic or overwhelming. Even small incremental steps, can
Oh.
create a ripple effect over time.
It's about consistency and intentionality
Mhm.
rather than striving for perfection.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to emphasize the importance of approaching adulthood with a sense of curiosity and openness to learning.
Yeah, the chapter really underscores the idea that learning doesn't stop when we finish school.
Right.
It's a lifelong process of discovery and growth.
And it's not just about acquiring knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's about understanding ourselves better,
Yeah.
expanding our perspectives, and developing the skills and resilience to navigate life's complexities.
So, as we continue on this journey of adulthood, let's embrace the challenges and the triumphs, the uncertainties and the discoveries with a spirit of curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to learn and grow.
Beautifully said. And remember, we're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of fellow travelers out there sharing their experiences, insights, and support.
So let's connect with each other, learn from each other, and create a more vibrant and enriching experience of adulthood for ourselves and for generations to come.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of adulthood. We hope it sparked some new insights, inspired some reflection, and left you feeling empowered to embrace this extraordinary stage of life.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone who might be on their own journey of navigating adulthood.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and embrace the adventure of being human.